Tonight we have a very special guest on our Camp Chat series. His name is Joe Eppele. For those of you that don't know him, I'm very surprised that you don't know Joe. Joe's a very popular face in the hunting industry and very active on social media platforms. I've known Joe for a couple of years. I did a deal with him on some equipment a couple of years ago, so I met him in person. I have a photo that I pull out every once in a while just to show people how small I really am, standing beside Joe. It's a good photo, and I appreciate you letting me take that because it's got a lot of raised eyebrows and go, wow, that's a large man. Anyway, thanks. So for those that don't know Joe, he's a BC boy, Squamish based. You've lived there pretty much your entire life. I guess maybe a bit with your career you bounced around, but
yeah, born and raised.
Squamish.
I was born the local hospital and raised in a house less than a kilometer from my current house. But yeah, obviously during my athletic and academic career, I moved away for a little bit. But this has been my homestead for the majority of my life.
It's a beautiful part of the country. And Joe is a husband. He's got one son who's growing like a weed. I follow you as well, and that boy, I think he's going to be every bit as big as his dad when he gets there. So that'll be fun keeping him in shoes, I'm sure, when he gets older.
Oh boy, yeah, he's already filling stuff out quick, but hopefully he'll be packing moose quarters for me in no time.
Yeah, kids are handy for that. They're handy for that. So I'm just looking at your bio, Joe. It says you actually work for WildTV as well. You're a business development guy there. So is that the case?
Yeah, I'm the director of business development for WildTV and our family of companies. So it's WildTV, Recoil Creative Group, Cowboy Channel Canada, RFD TV Canada, and then Water Channel Canada. So despite what most people think, I don't just hunt for a living. I have a regular 9 to 5. It's just because I work for the network, they're a little more lenient when it comes to taking time off.
Right on. Okay, that's pretty cool. That's a good job. And then also, I think everybody knows this, you're the co-host of the Edge TV show, and you're also a former CFL football player.
So. Yes, sir. That was an extensive introduction, and you were very generous with some of the praise along the way, so I appreciate that. Yeah, no, I had an athletic career. Played in the CFL for a little while. Won the 100th Grey Cup back in the day. Seems like a lifetime ago. And now I get to do the stuff I'm really passionate about, which is run around the mountains here in BC.
Awesome. Well, that's, as much as we could talk about football and all the other fun stuff, we got you on here to talk hunting. So I got to tell you, man, 2022 and 2023 have been some pretty epic, like spectacular, epic hunting seasons for you. So I'm just going through the list, and I don't know if I got them all, but in 22, it was a black bear, a moose, an elk, your first stone sheep. And that's what I know about from BC. Was there some international stuff last year as well?
I went to Argentina last year. I didn't end up pulling the trigger. Had a beautiful stag in the crosshairs, but the cameraman didn't get on him. There was some complications with some bush in the area. I did go down to New Mexico and I got my first pronghorn. That was a fun hunt. What else did we do last year? Seems so far away now. It's been such a busy year. Got a goat last year as well. Northern BC.
Mountain goat. Cool.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if I honestly
was that
year last year.
Was your goat on the same hunt as your sheep? Was it like that was the same trip, right?
It was the same trip. We ended up making 2 episodes out of it. Yeah, it was all on one big jet boat trip up north, but the stone sheep hunt was kind of separate because we went up to a certain spot. I had my buddy drop me off. He went down and hunted the river, and I did 8 days on foot. And then I came back down and rejoined him, and we went and did a goat hunt from there.
So did you, on that one, you had a cameraman with you as well?
Yes. Yeah. I had a buddy, Matt. It was an experience for him. He trusted me a lot because he went from doing some whitetail hunting and black bear hunting, like day trips, to agreeing to do this backcountry trip with me. And I'm bullheaded when it comes to being in the mountains and hiking and pushing hard and giving her. And I mean, I can hike pretty decent, and it took us 2.5 days just to get back to where we were hunting sheep. And that poor sucker kept up with me pretty good through the whole trip. There was a few spots where we took breaks, and I probably cursed him under my breath a bit, but he made it.
Well, that's tough too, especially if you're the guy that is struggling to keep up with the other guy.
Yeah.
Life is hell. I've been on a couple trips like that, and I can speak with experience that it's tough. And of course, I'm sure his pack was probably pretty heavy with camera gear and then all his hunting or survival gear, camp gear, and everything.
I packed a lot of extra gear when it comes to like shelter and things like that for that purpose. Because I mean, I feel bad for the camera guys. Like as the hunt goes on, my food bag gets lighter, my pack gets lighter. Obviously, his food bag gets lighter, but those batteries, that camera gear, all of that stuff doesn't get any lighter as the hunts go on. So it takes a special breed to A, be a cameraman in the backcountry, and B, be a cameraman in the backcountry that's stupid enough to agree to go with me. So.
I bet it's an adventure though, for sure. I bet he loved it. So let's fast forward to 23. You've been a busy boy. So you did an Aoudad hunt in Texas. That was with Snyder, right?
Yeah. I went down. We were chatting at Western Hunt, and it was supposed to happen in, I guess, end of February or some point. And then he called me. He's like, "Hey Joe, I got a window in my schedule. We got to bump it up." So I ended up like jumping. I jumped in my truck, and I was like, "Kate, we're giving her," and headed down. We were down there. I think it was 3 or 4 days down running around with Snyder. Ton of fun. Aoudad hunt. Like I've heard of them. I've seen the stuff, but I mean, when you think about hunting in Texas, you don't think about the Paladero Canyon where it's like steep goat country, and you're hunting these like mesquite flats right next to these canyons. So it goes from like this rolling flat kind of openish deserty type terrain to steep goaty bluffs. It was a really cool fun hunt.
You know, a lot of people I'm sure you've heard the quote, it's referred to as the poor man's sheep hunt, right? To hunt the Aoudad. And, you know, we kind of say that with a grain of salt from BC when we buy our $46 sheep tag. But our friends south of the border are, you know, notching 6 figures on the checkbook to do it. Yeah. And I would imagine, you know, I'm looking into some hunts. My wife actually suggested we do go to Texas, and I could do an Aoudad hunt. So I'll be picking your brain on that one when we start getting a little closer.
If there's one thing I can say about the hunt is do it. They are beautiful animals. It can be as tough of a hunt as you want it to be, or as easy as a hunt as you want it to be. I went down with the bow, me, camera guy, and Snyder were sneaking around the bush, and they stay herded up pretty big. So they'll have 30 to 40 head, like ewes and lambs with the rams. So it makes it challenging. You have that many eyes in some of that open terrain to get in on. So to do it with a bow was difficult, to say the least. But beautiful country, beautiful animals, like just such cool, fun animals to chase. And really cool terrain. So it's a great off-season hunt. I mean, it's a great hunt any time of the year, but during the off-season, I really enjoyed it.
And how's the meat? Is it, what did you say, on the sheep scale or the goat scale or somewhere in between?
More late season goat scale.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So shoe leather-ish.
Yeah, it's tough. It's grainy. Like you cut it and it's kind of like cutting through piano wires. It's not the best table fare. You're probably going to get a lot of jerky and pepperoni out of it. Yeah. I don't know. I've talked to a lot of people. I haven't heard anybody ever tell me stories of, like a lot of animals, if you shoot them pre-rut, they'll be really tasty. And then post-rut, they're different. But I think Aoudad, actually, they're receptive. Like they're kind of breeding on and off throughout the whole year, I believe. So I don't know that there's like, I haven't heard too many people say, "Oh man, I had this Aoudad steak and it was unreal." But if anybody out there has recipes, please send them my way.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Right on. And then, so that was Aoudad. You did some spring bear hunting this year. I followed you a bit, but you didn't pull the trigger this year, did you?
No, last year I took 2. I got a beautiful archery boar, and then I was actually out scouting for a bear for my wife, and I took another really nice boar with my rifle that night. And I got closer to him than I got with my bow on the other one, but I just timing wise, I left my bow in the truck. But I had a really good season for bear last year, so this year I was being pretty picky. Put a lot of time into it. And my goal was either a color phase bear, I'd take a color phase boar with the rifle, or if it was going to be a jet black bear, it was going to be archery.
Okay.
I had 2 opportunities on really like beautiful hammer black bears, but both of them would have been rifle opportunities. I was tempted. My finger got itchy, but I just said, you know what, I'm sticking to my guns. I'm sticking to what I said. And I didn't pull the trigger on either of them. Did I regret that a little bit? Maybe, because I do love, like, we eat a lot of bear meat around here. I love the rendered bear fat. We use all of that at our house. But yeah, no, just.
Bear, are you do you use like as burger, roasts, sausage? What do you prefer with bear meat?
Roasts, a lot of burger. I actually do a lot of my jerky. I make a lot of grind jerky with my bear that a lot of people really enjoy. But even just steaks and roasts, I've done it a lot. I'll sous vide it a lot, which is when you put it in like the Ziploc bags or the vac pack bags, and then you boil it. So you use that to get it up to temperature pretty high. Because one of the big issues people have with bear meat is you have to get it to 165 for trick. Technically, it's lower, but to be safe,
you want
to
side,
go
165,
right? They don't do a lot of studies. They've done a lot of studies on farm trick versus wild trick, and you can apparently go as low as 132, but they haven't studied the wild strain of trick. So everybody just says go 165. That's where the tests live for that. But yeah, so we do a lot of those types of things. Sous vide is a really good way to get around that. And then we actually started doing last year or the year before a lot of like shredded pork and shredded beef recipes and using our bear meat for that. So like pulled meat sandwiches, all of those types of things. And it's perfect meat for that. Perfect meat.
Right on. Yeah, I think, the table fare side of hunting is probably the least talked about, least exposed on social media and stuff. And to me, I mean, that's the reason we do it, is to create these crazy meals. I mean, there's nothing better than having someone who's never eaten wild game over for dinner, and then showing them what you can do with it and how good it is, right? And there's so many recipes out there. So we've got a space on Spike Camp just for field to table, and hoping to push that pretty hard this winter, get guys on there with some recipes and stuff. So that's cool.
Right on. So I'll throw some up there for you guys.
Oh, that'd be great. So back-to-back sheep 2 years in a row, like, congratulations, man. What was the difference between the first hunt last year? I'm assuming you've been hunting sheep, I would hope, given that I've been doing this for 6 years and haven't killed one. I hope you didn't just walk out last year, do a big hunt and shoot one, and then shoot another one the next year.
No, my first ram was on my 5th sheep hunt that I've done.
Okay.
None of them guided. Some were with some friends. I've done stone sheep hunts, and I've done some hunts along the Fraser River. Each hunt's been over a week. There was a lot of lessons learned along the way. A lot of lessons learned with my first harvest that I used to make sure that my second harvest. My first ram, as I'm sure if people have been following along, know that it was a younger ram. So there were some mistakes I made in the field with regards to aging properly and making sure that it was a mature ram. But again, well past the nose, like very legal. Like
very legal, yeah.
2 inches past the nose. But after my first ram, kind of after getting that out of the system, my second ram, he was a month. Like, I could tell he was a great ram, and I closed the distance, and I spent like 5 hours watching him before I could get a good count on him to make sure. I just knew, regardless, I wasn't going to shoot a ram unless he was 8+. And this guy was. There's been a lot of back and forth whether he's 8 or 9. I'm going with 8. But a beautiful ram, like heavy bases, holds the mass well, beautiful tight curl, beautiful cape, huge body on him too. I mean, if you sheep hunt and if you've taken a stone sheep, you know the meat is delicious. And unfortunately, they're not the biggest animals in the bush, and you eat a lot in the field. But luckily, this guy's body was big enough. I was actually able to bring a lot of meat home with me still, not just eat a bunch of them in the hills.
Yeah, they're so good. I've been on one successful sheep hunt, and I still tell people, and of course, you're eating dehydrated meals for a week,
Oh.
and then you cut into something like that, or you could probably have any meat and think the same. But there's something about stone sheep and the fat, right? Like put some of that fat on the frying pan or the rock or whatever you're cooking on. I mean, I could swim in that shit. It's so good. It's
the
so
fat
good.
caramelizes. It's like somewhere between like a really nice beef and like almost like a pork. It's got some, I don't know if the pork side of it just comes from the fact that you have been eating dehydrated meal and everything, but it's like a sweet, really tasty fat. Whereas a lot of other game meats, the fat gets waxy, especially as you get into the colder months. It gets waxy, sticks to your mouth, all of that. This fat is just, and I always bring a little bit of seasoning in my backpack as well. So like you're eating everything else, and all of a sudden you have like these well-seasoned ribs over a fire.
Unbelievable.
I don't know if I'll ever have a better meal in my life.
Yeah, exactly. So, so this year's hunt, you said you did jet boat last year. Of course, we don't want to know where, and you'll never tell us. But was it the same transportation, or were you flying this year, or did you do something different?
No, this was a different location. We went up. It was a combination of a lot of miles on the pickup truck. Then we did some side-by-siding into an area, and then a lot of foot miles from there. And covered a lot of ground. And then, it was a very different experience this year in that the previous year I called it, when we put the show on air, we called it a solo hunt. We put it that way because it was just me and my cameraman, no guide experience or anything like that. And my cameraman was very new to sheep hunting. So it wasn't like it was two experienced sheep hunters going in, but it wasn't a true solo hunt. Whereas this one, I was at camp, so we were kind of camped out with other guys, but my cameraman had an injury the day before. So when I went in that day, I was full solo. I was just going up in the hills to try and make something happen, because you have the pressure to try and get an episode when you're in the bush. And I had spotted some sheep off in a very distant area, and I just woke up in the morning. I was like, I'm going to bring a little bit of self-filming gear. I'm going to do my best. So when the episode does come out, forgive me if it's not up to snuff for everybody, but I'm trying to age a ram. I'm trying to get close enough and close a distance and not get busted by this band of rams. And there was a big group of ewes and lambs with them as well. So it was quite the experience. But for someone who doesn't get to hunt on my own as much as I used to and as much as I like to, being able to have such an exciting hunt happen when I was completely on my own was a really special opportunity for me.
I can only imagine. So then this band of rams and lambs and ewes that you saw, the first time you saw them, was it something just fell behind you?
My Aoudad skull just fell off.
Is that what that was?
No. I think he's okay though, so we're good. I look, there's no bone pieces around. They're tough. They smash heads all year. So
well, put a tag on it, Joe. You just tag something else right there.
Yeah, I know. We just dropped something in combo.
Joe, I had a quick question for you on the sheep. Was it a different time of year than your first ram? Like it almost looks like the hide of the coat was like a lot darker on this one.
Yeah, it was a different time of year. What time? I don't think we were. Yeah, it wasn't in October. It was later in September for this ram for sure. But I was surprised for the time of year. We actually looked at him and we realized that the cold weather must be moving in pretty soon because he was furred up more like I wouldn't say a late season ram because I've seen some late season rams where it's a really thick cape, but he was furred up definitely like towards the end of mid season. Like he had a really thick coat on him. I packed the entire cape out, so I can tell you he had a very thick coat on him because that sucker was heavy.
Oh yeah.
But the fat on him too, like he had fat on him like a muley or something. Like he was real thick fat, which was, again, if you enjoy sheep fat and you enjoy eating the meat, was a huge blessing in the bush to be able to snack on all of that, put on a few pounds after hiking so much.
For sure.
But yeah, probably only a few weeks because my previous ram was early September. And then, this ram was later on in September, but probably only 2 or 3 weeks later in the year, but a huge difference with regards to body fat, with regards to cape, all of the above. Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay. So you spotted them in the morning and said, sayonara, I'm going for it. I
had spotted them.
That's how that went.
Yeah, I spotted some sheep on a far ridge, on a distant ridge the previous day. What had happened is my cameraman, he got a bit of a calf strain early in the day, and then it progressed and got worse as the day went on. And I saw it on distant area, and I was like, there's no way we can get out there and get back. And it was torturous because I saw a good group of ewes and lambs, and I could tell that there was 4 rams with them. I could see enough of what ended up being my ram that I knew he was one that I wanted to get a better look at, but I was still pretty far away. So I kind of took a mental note of where they were, continued the day's hunt. By the time we got back to camp that night, the injury had progressed to the point where we knew if I was going to be hunting with my cameraman, like I was going to be very handcuffed to what I was going to be able to do. So I kind of just said, hey man, stay at camp, rest up. And I'm going to go make the most out of today. Cause I knew where I wanted to go after seeing those sheep. I was like, I know I got to get back here. And yesterday was tough, but like, it's going to be a lot worse today. So yeah, I woke up in like full tilt right from waking up, started covering ground aggressively. Like I was dripping from start to finish to where I got to the point where I had eyes on them. And I did have an encounter with a wolf on the way up as well. So I ended up taking a wolf on the way up, and then got in on him. But it was a long poke to get back into them, and it's an area they were just migrating through, and I happened to catch them. So I caught them farther along on a few more ranges. And it just so happened I crept over this ridge, and I knew like they should be somewhat in that area, or I'd have to start covering more ground to find them. And I could just see the tops of 3 of their heads on the backside of a ridge. And then at probably 2.5 or 3K. And then they started feeding up towards me, and I could start seeing more of them. And then they were standing there scrapping and fighting. And then as the day progressed, I watched and waited, and because where they were in a spot I wouldn't be able to get into safely without being spotted. And we played a little bit of back and forth because they were kind of in the bottom of the basin. They started going up the one side. So I grabbed all my gear. I stayed at like 2.2 or 2.5K away just to make sure I was far enough away I wouldn't bust them, and dropped down through the valley bottom all the way, start going up the other side. And then I look ahead, and some ewes and lambs and stuff came up. So they went back to the other side of the drop. They're going up the other side. So I was like, okay, all the way back down to the bottom, back up, start climbing the other side, get into a rock pile, belly crawl up over an edge. And I'm looking at them, and they had hung up in a small little patch of like the alpine trees on the side, and they're hanging out there. And then all of a sudden I'm watching them there for maybe like 15 minutes. I'm getting my breathing calm. And then they go back the way they had gone the first time. And I was like, you guys are just ticking me off now. So I had to go all the way. I waited this time until they went. There was a bit of a roll until they kind of went out of sight, but I knew what direction they were going. And this time, like dead sprint all the way down, and like without breaking stride, climbed all the way to the top of this range. Luckily, I wasn't sure if they were going to roll over into the next kind of area or what was going to happen. So I got to the top, got my spotter out, put it on my tripod. I used my phone adapter to make sure I could zoom in and kind of use that to count annuli and age. And I got my gun out on my bipod, and I'm trying to mess around with this camera and stuff. And I start belly crawling with one thing in each hand, and I'm crawling along, and I kind of realized like I was getting towards the tail end of this one shoulder that I was on. And I was like, if I don't see them on this next roll, they're gone from here, and I'm going to be chasing them. And I peek over this last rise, and I'm crawling along, and all of a sudden I look, and there's 3 of the 4 rams feeding around this big rock. And right away I recognized the 3 of them as the 3 younger rams from the group. And the ram that I wanted to see, I could just see the crown of his horn and his lamb tip sticking out from behind the rock. So I kind of just got into position, and I ended up just hanging out there for quite a while before I could see and get a good age on him. And obviously I had to wait him out till he stood up.
Mm-hmm. So had you'd already sort of confirmed that you had no idea he was legal till you were that close? Yeah.
I knew he was legal on full curl at that point. So I knew he was legal on curl. But I was dead set not shooting a ram that was under 8. Mm-hmm. So I had no idea how old he was at this point. I knew, after I saw those other 3 rams, I knew that he was probably going to be close because they had short annuli, but he ended up just being a freak. Like he had really strong growth. But at one point in time, I had as I mentioned, I had the phone set up on my spotter, and it was kind of pointed right where it needed to be. And then the youngest ram went and tried to bed down right next to him. and he got up from behind the rock and ran the youngest one off. And I think I timed it. It was like 5.6 or 6 seconds. He got up, ran the other one off, and went back in behind the rock. But because I had been recording it through my spotter, I was able to zoom in, freeze frame, and then kind of count annuli. And I was like, okay, obviously he's well past the nose. That's never been an issue here. But there's, clear as day, 3 clear annuli well before the base. So at that point, I knew it was game on. And all of a sudden, lying there in the dip while I'm waiting out the rainstorm and all of that nasty stuff, and I started cramping a bit, I was like, I don't even care. I don't care at this point, because this guy's in the wide open. And I think the rock was at 436 yards. So it's like everything was just playing out perfectly. It was pretty cool.
So you put the Snowy Mountain 300 PRC to work.
Dude, I'm telling you. So some people know I was shooting a 6.5 Creedmoor for a while, and I got the job done with the 6.5. But that 300 PRC is a hammer. Like everything I've pointed at, I think the furthest distance from point of impact to animal like expiring has been 10 yards. If 10 yards, and that was my caribou. But everything else has been like bang flops on the spot. And the ram was no exception. So I waited him out. I mentioned I waited him out for quite a while. Then the group of ewes and lambs were actually coming up over the ridge as well. And I was worried because my wind, so they're right here, my wind was blowing kind of quartered too. And I was like, this isn't the best, but there's no other way I could have approached them from. And I realized at that point too, I was skylined. So this kind of little bowl I had crawled into, if I moved at all, and there was one of the little rams was bedded and staring at me, if I moved at all, like the blue skies had come out, if I moved, I was busted. So I'm like, okay, I can't move. I'm starting to cramp. This is super uncomfortable. But these ewes and lambs came up and started feeding past them towards me. And I was like, okay, if these ewes and lambs come too close, they might catch my crosswind. And then they're all going to bust out of here. So I'm kind of going to be screwed. But luckily, when the ewes and lambs started coming past, all the rams got curious and they jumped up and started heading towards them. And then he actually got up and started feeding straight at me and was kind of coming through the rocks. And I was like, okay, it's fine. But I just kept the gun on him. And I just had to wait till he turned broadside. I had some opportunities. I could have taken like a brisket shot or a 1/4-2 shot, but they weren't on high alert. I knew I had time. So I kind of just waited. He wasn't perfectly broadside, but he was mostly broadside. And when you guys see the episode when it goes live, like you guys will be able to see the kill shot, but there was no doubt. And that's what you dream of, right? Is like you pull the trigger. There's not okay, I got to go chase him. I got to go find him. And I was really far from camp, so I was really glad I didn't have to go even farther from camp to find him, because we were by some really nasty cliffs and bluffs. But luckily he piled up right there.
And so then the work begins. So this is quite the day. You're solo. You shot a wolf on the way up.
Long day.
Yeah. Played tag with these things back and forth on the mountain range, trying to figure out where they're going to go and shoot this ram. Then you got the work ahead of you and the pack out. So did you stay the night on the mountain, or did you make it back to camp?
No. So here's the when you're filming for a show, you got to get a lot of stuff on footage, right? You have to get it on camera. So I mentioned I was doing a lot of aging through my phone, and I was using the other cameras to film. And I'm not as smart as a cameraman, so I don't know when to turn the camera off and turn it on. And I didn't want to have to be messing with turning cameras on when the moment happened. So I did a lot of just letting stuff run and letting it roll. So I think I was down to like 5% battery on my phone. I filmed the kill shot through my phone. All my other camera gear had died. And I'm like, okay, dude, you got to get up soon because my phone's about to die. He gets up, get the kill, and I walk up to the ram, and I got a few quick pictures. And I was about to do some more filming, and then my phone died. So I had lost, and I normally have a battery bank with me and some charging cables, but me being who knows what, that morning I left it at camp. So all my electronic camera gear died. We're not supposed to, we're not really allowed to, come home without a bunch of stuff filmed. So I gutted the animal. I gutted the ram. I packed the gut bag and everything way away from the animal. I slashed the guts and put him in an area that would draw him to a different spot. I went back over to the ram. I urinated and defecated near him. And then I stripped down, took off all my base layers, my stinkiest base layers, and I wrapped this ram up. So I gutted him. I put him in a position where the wind would blow in nice, cooled him off. And then I wrapped him up like a mummy with all my clothes. And I waited until close to last light. And then I had a really long hike out. I got back to camp, and then I woke up first thing the next morning with batteries and went back in to get. But yeah, that was a boneheaded move on my part. If I had a battery pack, it would have been a very different day for me. But that's the things we do to be able to share our stories as well, right? So,
well, and I think that's that kind of leads in a little bit later into something I was going to mention about your show. I mean, it's raw, it's real, and you guys are just two guys that hunt, and now it's the business of creating a television show. So, those are moments where, it's a stone sheep hunt in British Columbia. You don't want to blow the hunt, I guess, to sacrifice the TV show. But at the end of the day, you got it done. You got your kill shot.
Yeah, it was one of those situations where, if my camera gear died, would I have still shot the ram? Yes. Like, I'll be perfectly honest, that ram, it being in that situation as a resident hunter and someone who had an opportunity on a ram like that, I was definitely going to take the shot, but it would have completely jeopardized the experience. Probably wouldn't have been an episode. It would have been something we talk about inside a separate episode. And yeah, you definitely have a lot of pressure, and you take on that kind of weight of, if it's such an exciting experience and such a cool story, you really want to share it with people. So I really wanted to make sure that I was able to do that. And luckily it played out. And I mean, we were definitely getting right down to the wire, but it did play out. And then it was a gamble as well. I mean, anytime you leave an animal in the field, it's a gamble. I knew I'd shot a wolf on the way in there. So I was kind of, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, the wolves aren't going to be as eager maybe, or they're probably not going to track me down or follow my tracks. Because of the location he was, I felt pretty good about my chances of him not getting messed with. And then, like I said, over my years in the bush, like, I use all my experience of what to do to preserve that animal, to make sure everything was okay. So, display the traits of a dominant predator in the area. So urinate, defecate around it, make sure you leave as much of your scent as possible. So I was literally like, for hours, because I had so much time before getting close to last light, before I hiked out, I stayed around the ram. I was just spreading my scent everywhere, geared off. And I mean, I'm sweaty and stinky, so I'm taking all my clothes off, tying them up to him, and just did everything. And then, head back to camp. And as soon as I could in the morning, I was right back in there. But it was a long distance. So there's still quite a bit of the day where you're not with the ram. But fortunately, it all worked out.
Well, that's awesome. Well, congratulations on doing it 2 years in a row and upgrading the age and class, because I mean, that's the right way to do it. I think nobody's going to ever criticize someone for taking their first legal ram if it's legal, right? And I think the Wild Sheep Society of BC is doing a really good job of promoting good decisions. When we did our sheep camp back in the summer, we had Bill Jex on, and that was one of the topics we talked about, was just making good decisions in the field. And we spend so much time, energy, and money to go on these hunts and train all year long to do a sheep hunt, and we should be able to take, if it's legal by law, we should be able to take it. And I think the same applies to deer hunters too, in my opinion. Same as mule deer hunting, right? If you're a first-time hunter, shoot a 2-point in October. But if you've shot a couple 2 points, or you want to go to that next level, then try to get a big mature animal, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm in a fortunate position. So I mentioned, after my first ram, my second ram, I was very selective and things like that. I'm very understanding. There's a lot of people that will only ever, if they're lucky, they'll get to go on one sheep hunt in their life. And I mean, ultimately, as long as you're following the rules and you're hunting by all the regulations, it's your tag. You can legally do with it what you want. And then as hunters, I think as we grow and experience an opportunity in the field, we kind of set our own parameters around what we would ethically or choose to harvest, I guess morally would be the right way of saying that. But it's up to everybody. Some people only get, like, their work or their personal lives only allow them 1 or 2 weekends to go hunt a year, if that. I mean, So if they shoot a smaller deer, am I going to judge it for it? No. I mean, growing up, I grew up in a small town. Like, my family, we hunted to eat. Like, we were meat hunters. People call themselves meat hunters. My dad was a a welder from BC Rail. My mom like had some on and off jobs. She was a local mushroom buyer. Like 3 of us kids at the house. I'm a big dude. I ate a lot. Like we hunted to eat. But one of the most exciting things was when one of the boys like came of age and we're like, okay, great, more tags.
Another tag. Exactly.
Freezer. That's what we did. But like, did we shoot big bucks? Yes, we shot big bucks. Did we shoot spikes and forks? Yes, because that was meat in the freezer. So it would be extremely hypocritical for me to ever judge somebody for doing that. Have I shot spikes since? I mean, I arrowed a spike fork Blacktail 2 years ago when I was archery hunting. It was delicious. I mean, so I think as a community, we shouldn't ostracize people for doing that. But I think at the same time, as in your experience, as you grow, I know for a fact that like I'm going to shift species, like focus when it comes to sheep hunting. I'm going to switch focus to the next species now, because in all likelihood, it would take me a very long time to find a stone ram of that caliber. So I'm extremely happy with that ram. Will I take other friends out hunting? Will I do other stone sheep hunts? Yes, but the likelihood of me harvesting a ram, I would say, is quite a bit lower, at least for the next few years. So I'll probably go out and focus on the next species down the line now.
That's why they call it the Grand Slam.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, as long as you're in sheep country.
Exactly. So caribou then, the caribou this year, was that the same trip, the sheep hunt?
Yeah, same trip. So the whole trip was just a planned caribou hunt. And we went into the one area and we just saw so many wolves, like crazy amounts of wolves, that we kind of realized that might not play out the way we had wanted, because the area where the caribou we expected the caribou to migrate through was where all the wolves were. So we kind of had a bit of time to play around. We weren't seeing any caribou. So I mentioned I shot the one wolf that morning. I ended up taking 2 more wolves out of the area.
Nice.
And then a few days after that, we saw some caribou start showing up. Now, was it just timing because of the migration or who knows what? But the wolves were setting up in a spaced out like web across an entire valley. And I watched it happen a few times before I kind of was able to, I guess, take the opportunity to go in and remove 2 more wolves from that group, because I realized what was happening, and I was like, okay, I know how to make a play on these guys now. And I have a pop-up decoy from Predator Decoys, or Ultimate Predator Decoy, and it's a cow caribou pop-up. And I thought I was going to use that to try and sneak in on a caribou, but I used that to sneak in on the wolves that I took. So they saw me coming in because I had to come across an open area, but I had a caribou pop up that I used to sneak in. So if the wolves stick around because they saw a caribou pop up coming in and they were kind of getting in this one area, like that just tells you they were there for a reason. And it was definitely to kind of thin out the caribou.
And they've probably been doing that exact same ambush for hundreds of years, and they knew what was happening. So actually, Blake, you got a question for Joe you wanted to ask about sheep hunting before we jump around a bit.
I was curious on, like you said, you had a few years or 5 sheep hunts before you were successful. Was there any, like, what changed for you to like find success versus the first 5 years? Was it a mindset shift? Was there certain tactics or specific learnings you kind of picked up along the way? Anything you could say on that?
I'm sure there are some things that kind of changed about my behavior up there, like little things of where I set up my camps, as well as probably eagerness. Like your first sheep hunt, when you're going in, I was going in a little green. I was a stubborn, athletic individual, but a sheep hunt is humbling and it'll break a guy down. And we did a really aggressive one on a map. We're like, okay, yeah, I think it was like 35 or 37 kilometers off the highway to where we wanted to set up camp. And we did not hunt our way in. We just like got out of the truck and killed ourselves getting right there, burnt ourselves out, like just maxed our legs out day one, getting to our base camp area. But we also went past so much great terrain and so much great country, just because we're like, I just want to hunt this one area. And then we got back in there and we hunted that one area. There were some rams in there, some ewes, like nothing. I think we had just missed a few horse groups that had just left. So some other people had been in there hunting the area. So we'd kind of shot ourselves in the foot, but we had burnt ourselves out so bad that we were kind of like geo-locked. I'm like, man, we can't really hike anywhere else. So we're just going to hunt the heck out of these ridges. We were like skylining ourselves. We set one of our camps up right up on the top, a bright yellow tent, right up on top. And yeah, I think we just went past, we probably passed a lot of rams. We passed a lot of sheep for sure on our way in. So I think a few things is being patient, taking the time to stop and glass. I had one guy tell me, he's like, you got to stop and make pancakes. I was like, what does that mean? He's like, you got to take your time, relax. Like if you feel like taking a break, take a little bit of an extra break, do some more glassing, because you never know where you're going to spot these animals, right? And you kind of just, you have to pick apart every hillside you're going past. Don't rush to one spot. But yeah, probably patience, just understanding that you don't have to hunt super hard to be, or you still want to hunt hard, but you don't want to burn yourself out right away. And then the staying power towards the end, because the mountains will beat a guy down if you're doing a long extended backcountry hunt. Like mentally, it starts to break you down too. This year, it was early in the hunt, so I can't say that was a big thing. But last year, we were running out of food. I was getting ready to shoot a goat for meat. Like I was going to have to push back a bunch of deadlines and do a bunch of things, but I was like, I'm staying up here no matter what. But yeah, just like mental games, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that the mind is the biggest factor that you have to compete with when you're sheep hunting, because it really is, right? I mean, you hear it from every sheep hunter. And, you know, back to your point about burning yourself out, that's very true. I did something similar this year on our hunt. We, the spot that we've been hunting the last couple of years, it's like 2.5 days packing in, and it's a morale buster just to get in there. It's just, you're swimming in bush, you lose the trail. It's just nasty. And so we always go to this one spot before we camp at this one spot, and then we hit alpine the next day. And this year the weather got really bad on us, like when we got to this particular spot. And so we waited an extra day down there, and I didn't eat much that day. I was just hanging around the tent. You know, my body was just recovering from the first day. And then on that third morning when we went up, I bonked. Like I pushed through it, but Blake will tell you, it was like my low point. And this is day 3 of a 14-day hunt. I was just grinding, and I realized what I'd done. I had not eaten enough food during my off day. Like I skipped like almost an entire day's worth of calories. And then the next day when I needed them, there was nothing. I was just, and I'm 56 years old, going with a 28-year-old who's, you know, he's waiting for me all the way up there. But that's a good sheep hunting partner, because he gave me the therapy I needed on the way up, which, kicked me in the ass. He's like, Dad, you've been training all year. Get your ass up there. Let's go.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, I think going through some like previous shitty experiences makes it like, by comparison, you kind of learn, you're like, okay, at least it's not whatever. Like one trip we were weathered in a 2-man tent, me and my buddy, for 2.5 days. So like, yeah, you lose a day here, a day and a half there to bad weather. I'm like, oh, at least it's not that trip. Or like you said, understanding, one thing I've done a lot with my diet over the years hunting is I've messed around with the ratios of food to weight ratio that I pack. And I kind of know where I go in the backcountry. I definitely have a calorie deficit. I know I'm not getting what I need, but I know what like my bonk limits are. And I know like, okay, I sneak in a few treats. And I know where I kind of want to be. And I'll even pack some days where some days I'll have like 3 or 4 extra 100 calories, or maybe a little bit more, and I'll have them marked with something. So I know like, okay, on this day,
big day or whatever.
I have a big day or something like that. Or I have a day where I'm just bonked. I'm like, hey, that's like my carrot. Right. And sometimes like those little things will make such a big difference when you're in those situations, that'll just get you through it. Finding what motivates you, why you're back there, and just reminding yourself, because it's really easy when you're up there, you're not seeing the animals, weather sucks, whatever it may be, you're tired, you're sore, you're not getting the sleep you need, to start thinking about, my truck's not that far away. Like I can be back there, and then I can get, like, I'll be eating a pizza or an A&W burger in no time. And then all of a sudden, like when you're sitting here at your desk or on your couch, you're like, oh man, I can put in 20 days, no problem. But when you're actually in the bush, it's a different story. It's like they always say, what is it?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Well, after you've
Mike
been punched
Tyson.
after you've been punched in the mouth a few times, and now all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I can stick to my plan now. And I've been punched in the mouth a lot in the backcountry. I've had a lot of unsuccessful hunts, so that staying power I think comes with all those failures too.
That builds character in the hunting world. That's what you need to get it done in the backcountry for sure. So the caribou, this was, so you said you were in late September, this go around?
Yeah. I think we headed up on the 14th or something. And then my my caribou was right towards the tail end of September.
Okay.
Because
what
of the cameraman.
meat like there? Sorry.
Pardon me?
What was the meat like on that caribou? Because I hear a lot of people complain about that late September caribou hunt when they're in rut or starting to, and they're on the move.
I heard the same thing, which is kind of why we were really wanting to get a bull down early in the hunt, because I was like, I don't want to shoot a bull if the meat's going to be bad. But everybody says it's once you start seeing the rutting behavior kick off, that's when things happen. So everybody's like, oh, like the 17th to the 20th, if you shoot a bull after that, your dog won't even eat the meat. Like it's garbage. But we were up there. We weren't seeing any rutting activity. We did see some younger bulls go through after a bit that didn't have, like, they weren't acting rutted up. So we kind of pushed it, and I wasn't worried about it too much. And I have to say, like, got my bull down. I want to say it was like the 27th. And as soon as we got back to camp, I threw some meat on the grill, and I was like, I got to cook this and see what I'm up against. And absolutely delicious, like very mild tasting meat, like spoon tender. Like even the neck was a little tough because he was starting to pack on some weight on his neck, but it wasn't stinky, wasn't tough like people say, and delicious. And I brought it home. I've cooked it. I've cooked up roasts, steaks. I even did some neck stew chunks. I cooked them up in my cast iron as like steak bites, because I was like, if anything's gonna come out, it's like overheated neck meat is gonna taste off. And they were delicious. They were a little tougher than everything else, but still delicious. So I think this year, because of the weather, that might be why we didn't see them until later. We had such a hot summer, and the weather stayed really warm until later. I talked to some people in the area, and they said normally you'd have snow on the ground by then. We only had like skiffs 1 or 2 days. I think the rut, it's weird because the rut seemed to kick in a little bit early for some of the elk, but then it's still holding on right now, actually. But it's just been a really weird year. So I think we lucked out with like delicious meat. I've cooked it we've had some friends over, and everybody said it's delicious. And
yeah, I think, yeah.
I was just going to say, before I did the old meat eater, Steven Ranella, like eat the fat from behind the eyeball. People told me about it. And I was like, no way. I'm sorry, I'm shaking my finger here. But I was like, no way, I'm not going to do it. And I pulled the eyeball out, and I grabbed a little pinch, and I was like, I'll try it. And threw it in. And I kid you not, like before I knew it, I was 2 knuckles deep, gouging the rest of that eyeball fat out. It was tasty. Right? Well, it was, if you ever get a bull caribou down, eat the eyeball fat. You will not be disappointed.
That should be a T-shirt that Joe sells. Hey, eat the eyeball fat.
Eat the eyeball. Well, you know what? I tried it on my elk last weekend. Not the same at all.
No, different
you smell
experience.
It, and I'm like, you smell the caribou fat, and you're like, okay, it smells weird, but maybe it'll be different. It tastes different than what you expect. When you eat the fat from behind an elk's eye, and he was rutted up too, it's exactly what you expect, and it is not good. Like, it is horrible. I had to try it.
T-shirt number 2, don't eat elk eyeball fat.
Yeah.
Oh man. Oh, that's funny. Yeah. So the caribou, and then you mentioned elk are still in the rut. So you did a late season elk hunt, and was it typical elk, bugle them, call them in, cow call, or was it spot and stock? How did that one go?
Yes and no. So I went out to the Kootenays at the start of September for archery elk, and based on like what they were doing last year, I was like, oh man, it's gonna be slam dunk. We're gonna be chasing bugles. We're gonna be screaming, like it's gonna be a blast. And the bulls were still bachelored up. I hiked in on some, and I let out a cow chirp, and the bulls were gone. Like they would take off out of there. They wanted nothing to do with cows. So it made for a really tough hunt. We hiked back into some real crazy spots, and found some bulls that were hanging around with cows, but still They weren't fired up yet. They weren't running the cows. They were just with them. And we kind of hunted them like you would whitetail, like spot and stock whitetail or blacktail, like just trying to play their movement patterns and get in on them. And I got into 40 yards on one really nice bull. He was just standing behind a tree, and I was getting ready to draw on him, and then did not notice a cow and calf at 8 yards. And the cow made me and spun and ran, and the bull kind of looked around a bit and figured out we were there and buggered off. But so I had been out there. I put in quite a few days early. Then I left to go do the caribou hunt. And then as soon as I got back, thank God I have a patient wife, because I said, honey, I love you. I missed you. I gave my son a kiss, and I was like, let's go to the Kootenays and go chase elk, because I still got this tag, and we love elk meat. So we headed back out there, and lo and behold, like, we were seeing more rut activity when I went back out there than we saw during archery. The bulls were bugling all night. The herd bulls were still scrapping over cows and running cows. We went up, but we did hunt them similar to how we would late season. We didn't charge in and bugle them, do anything at 6 point or better, the area we were, most areas in BC right now. So we kind of just did spot and stalk, located, and got into position. This one, we ended up going like right up to a ridge top, and we found them. It was midday. They were hiding in some trees and kind of eating in the shaded areas between trees. And I was able to weave a shot down in to get my bull.
Oh, cool.
Between the trees. Yeah.
Right on. You're busy here, buddy. Holy moly.
That's awesome. It's been a lot. I've been on the road a lot. Like, I think I mentioned to you guys pre-call, I was home 3 days last month. So a lot of time in the bush. It's weird sitting in my house right now still. And I still got some cool hunts left, but nothing like what we had done so far. But it's fun, and very fortunate to get to go on some of these trips.
So you're switching gears to deer hunting now, I would take it.
Yeah. I went out over the weekend. I did some scouting for blacktail. I dropped some cameras in some spots I want to focus on later in the year. But next up, I promised my wife I'm going to try and get her mule deer. So she didn't get to do much hunting the last little bit, obviously with raising Junior, and we got out on some blacktail hunts and had some opportunities, but it just didn't work out for her. So going to go out and get her a mule deer here. And then after that's done, I'd like to get a mule deer or a blacktail. Hike around. If I find something nice, I'll make it happen. But like, it's kind of cool having the freezers pretty full right now at this point. It takes a lot of the pressure off. So it's more so just, I'm not at the point where I'm like, I'll hang up my cleats for the season, because being a hunter, we only get to hunt like Western mountains for so much of the year. So I'm not ready to hang it up, but I'm also not like, oh man, I got to fill the freezer right now. So I'm pretty cool.
You're probably doing okay in the meat department by the sound of it. So that's good.
For
that's
now,
awesome.
But the way my son eats, I'm like, I might have to shoot a few more things this year, because that kid can put it back.
Well, you got to raise them right. All three of my kids wild game their entire lives, and they all get it. They all understand it. So that's cool. You got them going in the right direction, Joe, for sure. So one thing I wanted to chat with you about, we could just talk hunting and nothing but for hours, I'm sure. But let's talk a little bit about your TV show, The Edge. I've loved it as long as it's been on the air. And like I said earlier in the interview, from the viewer's perspective, and I'm sure you get this a lot, it's real. I mean, you look at a lot of the hunting shows, there's a lot of new content. It seems that everybody now is trying to get their spot on networks, trying different angles. But you guys are just legitimately honest dudes that, I think Eklund said it on a podcast a while back. He's like, he had a mission to be able to find a way to have somebody help him fund his hunting and then hunt as much as he possibly can. And of course, sponsorships, television show. He's got a day job. You've got a day job. Tell us about that. I mean, that's quite a journey, I would think, to get from the concept of, I know you kind of backdoored your way in. You got a great opportunity and you took advantage of it. But the history of the Edge itself is pretty cool. Steve's story in that. And also, I guess the second half of this question is, what's it like to work with him? It's got to be crazy.
Yeah, that's a lot of questions in one question. So let me see if I can check them all off for you here. But yeah, first and foremost, we're extremely fortunate to do what we do with the show. We have some phenomenal partners behind us that I don't like saying sponsors, because sponsors imply that you're paid to give to give fake validity to companies or products. We've been around long enough that we work with brands and products that we truly believe in. Like, if it's not something that Steve or I would use in the bush, we're not going to talk about it, promote it, or do that kind of thing. So we're very fortunate in that. And I say partnerships over sponsorships, because sponsors, just like, you're paid to play, and that's not what we do. It's a passion project for both Steve and I. We don't make our livings through the show. We make our livings in outside things. The funding that comes in for the show goes into chasing our dreams and doing what we love to do, and makes it so our wives don't shoot us for being out there so much, because we can say, a lot of this is covered by the show, hon. I love you. But yeah, no, we're very fortunate, and obviously the viewers at home. So people just like you that tune in, that seem to enjoy it. We enjoy sharing our stories, as I mentioned. So I'm glad to hear that some people enjoy following along as well. But yeah, Steve started on. So Steve wasn't the initial guy behind the show either. Steve came on, I think, season 2 or 3. Ryan Kohler started the show. Then he brought Steve on, and it quickly became the Steve Eckland Show. With Steve's personality, huge personality. That man is made to be in front of a camera. He's an entertainer through and through. So it was a natural fit for him. And he kind of has brought on some great partnerships and has had a lot of staying power, and people really enjoy him. So that carried the show for a long, long time, and still carrying it now. I was fortunate enough to join the experience 5 years ago. I came on board, and I was kind of brought on board on a short leash as like a trial period. Let's see how viewers react to Joe and what the deal is. But yeah, like, very right from the beginning, it was one of those things where I was like, we're not going to be fake. We're not going to reenact. We try not to do any reenactments. I mean, if we completely miss a portion of a story, we'll sit down and we'll talk about it, maybe to try and tie the story together. But like, you're not going to see all this. If it's a really easy hunt, it's going to come across as an easy hunt. If it's a tough hunt, it's going to come across as a tough hunt. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it was a really challenging hunt if it was easy. So we're not going to blow smoke up your ass. We're not going to do any of that stuff. But one conversation I had with Steve early on too is he told me, he said, listen, Joe, a bit of advice when I came on is he was just like, be yourself. And I was like, well, obviously. And he goes, well, be yourself. Because if you try and be someone else, if you try and be someone that someone that you think the viewers want to see, there's only 2 things that can happen, and they're both going to suck. One is people are going to hate you because you misunderstood what the viewers actually want, and you're going to come across as inauthentic, and they're going to see it, and they're going to dislike you. And then the rest of your life, you have to wonder if they would have liked you for who you really are. Or number 2, that could even be worse, is they're going to love you for being a fake person, and then you have to live out the rest of your career being a fake person on the show. You're going to have to go on all these amazing experiences and put on an act the entire time. So that was really cool advice to come from someone like Steve, and I did my best to apply it right out of the gates. As goofy as it sounds, being yourself on camera takes practice, because as soon as someone turns the camera on, if you're like me, I was always afraid of public speaking, afraid of a room with more than 2 people in it, like any of that kind of stuff. So if someone pointed a camera at me, I'd like, my tongue doubled in size. I froze up. You're like, what should I talk about? What shouldn't? Like, your brain goes blank. But slowly over the years, you get a little more comfortable with it all. But yeah, no, Steve's been phenomenal to work with. I'm sure there's times where him and I have both been in the room, and we can both be pretty stubborn and bullheaded. So we've probably clashed a few times. But phenomenal guy. Showman through and through, and an unbelievable hunter. So I'm very fortunate to be around Steve and to learn from him, and to be able to, say that I get to host a show with Steve, that him and I are co-hosts on the show. It's pretty cool that we get to both be out there doing what we love.
That's awesome. And you guys actually don't hunt together all that much with your schedules, right? Like he's got a plan that he goes after every year. He's on a big quest, and I mean, you're living in BC, right?
Yeah, we hunt together every now and then. Like we've done Argentina together. I had Steve out here. We got him his Columbia Blacktail. We did New Mexico pronghorn together. We've done a few different hunts. We've done Kislinger's bear camp a few times. Just with our schedules, we very similar hunt styles, very similar goals and aspirations in the hills, but different at the same time. Being from different provinces, the whole hunter host process can be challenging. And just the requirements. Steve and I are both expected to put together 6 episodes each in a year. So now all of a sudden, I mean, that's 6 episodes. So realistically, that's 7 to 8 hunts minimum to be able to have 6 successful hunts. And that's still like, you got to have good odds to be able to do that. And they have to be show quality animals. Now all of a sudden, every time you guys hunt together, those 2 hunts become 1, unless you get 2 really good animals. So now all of a sudden it spreads the year out a lot because you're filming your hunts. I still, sounds greedy, but I hunt for the show, but I love hunting on my own. Like my own time in the bush is very therapeutic for me. So I'll come home from a hunt. My wife will look at me and be like, you need to leave. You need to go hunt on your own, clear your head. So I hunt for the show 6 to 8 weeks, then, or more sometimes for the hunt. Then I go and do my own hunts. Then we're on the road a lot for different expos in the US. I do SHOT Show, Western Hunt, ATA. I'll probably do Sheep Show this year. We do the Sheep Show in BC. So when you combine all of that, it's sometimes difficult to align our schedules to be able to do too many hunts together. But we're in touch a lot. We chat a lot. We kind of push each other, rib each other a bunch. But yeah, we don't spend a ton of time hunting together.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There's a lot to unpack there when you look at, you started off by mentioning passion project, and Blake and I can relate. He looked at me when you said that because we started Spike Camp as a passion project for, between him and I, something to do, father and son. We had a lot of reasons. It's well documented on podcasts and on the platform if anybody knows us. But I got some advice from a friend of mine. It was kind of similar to what Steve said. And he said, when you do something out of passion and create something, whether it's a TV show or, a platform like what we're doing, and it's directly related to or because of your passion, an example being hunting or sports, you got to be careful that you don't cross lines and all of a sudden your passion is no longer fun, right? So you got to try to, like you said, you got to get out and clear your head. And we were racing through the summer doing stuff. Our platform's only been up since April, and so we did like Spike Camp Sheep Camp, where we did some episodes on sheep hunting, and then we did elk. Then there was a wedding, and then we're hunting, and then it's like, oh shit, we got to get back to work. We got to keep the passion project alive. So I can see what you mean. You get back from hunting. There's nothing I would rather do than just shut everything off and get out in the bush and hike myself. So yeah, good tips.
It's a balancing act. I've mentioned it numerous times. I have a very patient wife who helps me out a lot around the house, and having a 9 to 5, I mean, when you're gone, I come home, all those expectations, all those kind of sales quotas, targets, all of that stuff, I have to make up for. If I'm gone for those months, I still have to go back and reach my quotas on all those months. So you kind of have to work your schedule, be creative. I mean, heck, I've got my inReach with me in the hills sometimes, and I'm working deals from the side of a mountain, like helping people plan their marketing campaigns and strategies for the year, right? But and that's where that part of it too is why you have to be so passionate about it. I get a lot of people that ask me, like every time I do these Q&As, people always ask, like, how do I do what you do? What do I get into? And I'm like, honestly, you just have to find something you're passionate about and chase that down, because if I didn't truly love hunting, I would hate my life because the amount of time it takes to do what I do, to be out there scouting, like I work in the hunting industry. I talk to companies about it all day, every day. Then I'm at conferences for it. Then in my off time, I'm out there in the field gaining personal experience. Then I'm out there filming episodes. Then I come home, I'm testing products. You're doing all of this stuff. If you're someone that loves hunting, that's the dream. And I'm very fortunate because I get to chase the dream down. But if I didn't truly love it and I was doing it for the wrong reasons, I would have burnt out so fast. But But and
sure.
it sounds like it's the same for you guys, right? Like if you guys weren't truly passionate about this and creating this special environment that you're creating with Spike Camp, if you weren't really passionate about it, could you imagine the amount of hours and somehow motivating yourself to put those kind of hours in and passionately do it and research the subjects before these podcasts and do all of these types of things? It would be so impossible because you wouldn't truly love it, right? So it'd wear you down.
I hear you, brother. Absolutely. Well, what we'd like to do now, we've gone just over an hour. We want to wrap this up shortly. So we're gonna put Joe in the hot seat and we're gonna do a rapid fire questions here. So well, I don't think there's anything that's too tough here, but simple one. What are some of your specific goals in hunting? Like you've been knocking shit over like crazy last couple of years. It doesn't have to be animals, but what is any goals that you can think of off the top of your head?
I mean, standard for a sheep hunter, I want to do the Grand Slam. Okay. But for me, my biggest goal in the backcountry is just to kind of keep pushing myself and see what I'm capable of doing and what I'm able to do. So to kind of go out there and put forward the proper messaging that maybe has a positive impact and helps us hold on to our hunting heritage rights for a little longer. Mm-hmm. But yeah, my personal goals are just to keep getting out there and do what I get to do, to be honest.
Awesome. All right. Next question. What animal's at the top of your list right now? What's Joe thinking about?
Right now, like the next on my hit list, well, as we mentioned earlier, I'm switching gears into blacktail and mule deer, but I've dreamed about muskox or bison. Those are two that I really want to look into. And I'm also looking at a potential Alaskan brown bear hunt.
Nice.
Future, which is something that is a little outside of the norm for my typical style of hunt, but I fell in love. I watched a hunt. I wish I could go back. I watched a Kodiak brown bear hunt as a little kid, and I can still close my eyes and watch the hunt. It's been locked in my brain since I was a kid, so that's something I'm going to have to check off eventually.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, what does conservation mean for Joe Eppele, and what message do you want to deliver to hunters?
That's a big one. You can't do that in a hot seat. Kind of, that's like a start of the podcast. Conservation to Joe Eppele just means I wouldn't even say us as hunters, but us as a community, us as a whole, understanding our role in the food chain, I guess, or in the management of wildlife, whether that be cross-country skiers, hikers, loggers, whatever, understanding our role. And then within our own realistic capacity, doing what we can to make sure that we maintain a healthy balance and preserve the wildlife on the hills for generations to come. So it's not just hunters, not just non-hunters, it's everybody getting together, putting our differences aside and understanding the ultimate goal is keeping the wildlife out there.
Just a comment to further that, I think it's been evident in the last couple of years that all the stakeholders from the hunting side, whether it's wildlife conservation groups, First Nations, hunters, even the conservation officers and wildlife enforcement biologists, we need to be pointed in the same direction and we need to be aligned.
Yep.
And that's one of our missions too. So I'm glad to hear you say that. This is a pretty easy one. Today's world, there's a lot of new hunters. Everybody, it's a growth, sort of an in growth mode. We get a lot of adult onset hunters. What would be your best piece of advice for a new hunter?
Best piece of advice for a new hunter: don't think you need the fanciest shit in the bush. I killed a lot of stuff in my life, and I had some of my best hunting experiences in hand-me-down logging clothes, secondhand, like junk store rain gear, no binos. I had an old lever action 308 with a straight 4 on it, and I had great times out hunting. So don't think you need to be the coolest looking guy on Instagram, guy or gal on Instagram, to go out in the bush and have a good time. All you need is a hunting license, a set of regs, and a little bit of wilderness, and get out there and have a blast. Don't worry about the rest of it. The rest of it can come.
Exactly. Gear can always be upgraded. You just got to get out there.
don't burn yourself out. A lot of people go and they buy all this stuff because they think they know what they want. And then as soon as they go on their first hunt, they're like, this isn't the gear that works for me. I want this, this, and this. And then you sell it and you have to sell it at like 50% reduced price. And it kind of breaks you down, demoralizes you a bit. So like start small and work from there.
Yep. Good advice. What's your favorite British Columbia species to hunt?
There's so many different species, and I could argue for each one of them. I've truly enjoyed hunting stone sheep. I mean, if I could say species as a whole, I'd just say sheep in general. But I love elk hunting. The once you hear a bull bugle at you. But I mean, to be perfectly honest, if there was only ever one hunt I could do for the rest of my life, and it's one that probably gives me the most grief and frustration, it's blacktail hunting. It's what I grew up doing. I hate it, and I love every moment of it at the same time. But it's what I grew up doing. When I'm out there, it brings me back to my childhood. I lost my father. I get to kind of go back to some of those cool moments hunting with him. And I truly love it. A fall wouldn't be a fall without a little bit of blacktail hunting. So probably blacktail hunting, despite the fact that we have so many great opportunities.
It's interesting because Blake and I had a chat earlier today, and he said, "What do you think he's going to say to that question?" I said, "Blacktail." I said, "You can see the passion in Joe when he talks about blacktail hunting." And yeah, that's awesome. So what's your best tip for a blacktail hunter that's starting out? Because that young fella sitting in that other camera, he's on a blacktail journey, just started like a year ago. So what's your best tip for him?
If you think sheep hunting's a mental game, get ready for blacktail hunting. Blacktail hunting sucks. That's my best advice for it. And it's only getting worse because everywhere I used to hunt is getting overpressured. The shittiest weather, the nastiest days, the days you don't want to be in the bush are the best days to be out there. The nastiest spots are normally the best spots to go for them. And if you see a doe, you're having a smoking trip. So like if you see anything, you're doing well. There's certain spots. I know some people that hunt areas and they're doing really well, but for a lot of the hunts I've done, it's one of the most miserable, frustrating hunts. I think that's why I love it so much, because growing up, I mentioned I had the lower end of the gear, right? So I was always soaking wet. I was always cold. Like my hands were pruny. I was starving. I was miserable. And you go from just this really terrible kind of like, I want to go home. And then all of a sudden you see the deer and they're absolutely beautiful. Like if you've seen a true blacktail when it's wet in the bush, in the low cover brush, when they have those kind of burnt orange horns and that dark kind of cape coming out, there's few things that are as beautiful as that. And all of a sudden you're having like the worst day, you're miserable. Then you get this beautiful buck down and then you get to go home to the warmth of your house that night normally and like celebrate it. Like that's one of the coolest things. So it's a great experience, but I think what makes it so good is the fact that the lows are so low. So be prepared for
that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that is so true. Okay, we only got a couple more, Jill, and then we're going to cut you loose. So this might be a hard one. This would be a hard one for me. Oof. Your favorite wild game dish, and you are a foodie. So is there something that you're like, if you had to cook one more wild game meal, what is it?
Stone sheep ribs over an open fire. Done. Easy.
I'm 2 for 2.
Nice.
2 for 2. Awesome. All right. Now you can plug a partner if you want on this, or you can just pick something that you've tried and you like it. What's the best new innovation in hunting gear that you've tried out this year so far? Have you tried anything new? I'm sure you have.
You know what I'll say, and I've talked about it a lot, to be honest, and I've messed around with a lot of different phone scope adapters. The new all-in adapter, and not partnered with them, not affiliated with them in any way, shape, or form. And I do have a lot of phenomenal partners that make really good products. But I would say for me, it had the most impact on my hunt so far this year was the ability to quickly connect my phone to my spotting scope and use that to successfully ID my ram. I mentioned he only showed his face for 6 seconds, and I was quickly able to phone on, poof, film, record, confirm, especially with what's going on in the province right now with, issues of short sheep, immature sheep, like illegal rams being harvested, things like that. Doesn't have to be the only one. That's been my best experience so far out of the ones I've tested. But that is a phenomenal tool for aging sheep in the hills. You can get a good picture. You can freeze frame the one spot where the light hits it right, and then you can zoom in further. And you can wait, because sometimes when you're watching, you get that one glimpse and you're like, oh yeah, I think I'm pretty confident. And I think a lot of people talk themselves into bad situations. This will prevent that, and it'll allow you to really look and go, yep, no, that's legal. So I think for that reason, I would say that piece of equipment has been phenomenal. And the other reason is, if I went down the full list of other gear that I really believe in and love, we'd be here all night too. So
yeah, I hear. I'm a gear guy.
A lot of my social though, so if people follow along, I talk a lot about different gear that I'm testing out there.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I'm a gear junkie. Blake knows it. If I don't like it, it's sold and I move on. We did we bought an Olin as well, or All-in, I guess they call it.
I don't know if I'm saying it right. Never. Yeah.
Absolutely a game changer for us. I mean, I'm not a techie guy, and I can't tell you how many times I've fiddled around with, other companies' versions of that, adapter. And you're right. You just take your phone, boom, it's on there. Bam, you can open it up. You can do all the freeze frame. You can pinch. They are a game changer. It's
not the cheapest by any means, and I've used some other ones that are more universal for other optics, which were great and far more price, effective. But just for ease of use and speed and the clarity that I've been able to pull out of it, I would be lying if I said anything's come close.
Sure. Awesome. Well, Blake's got a question from Instagram, I think, right?
Yep. Yeah. You must know this guy, Matt Albright. I think he's a former footballer as well. He was asking if you ever hunt waterfowl, or if you have any interest or experience with those.
Yeah, I've hunted waterfowl. I lived in Ontario for 8 or 9 years when I was in the CFL, and then when I went back to school and I was doing my master's and stuff. And we did. I mean, that's a major flight path in Canada, so we did a lot of duck and goose hunting. I enjoy it a lot. It's a lot of fun. It's a very different type of hunt. For me personally, I love them both. Like a blue teal or something's delicious, but it's like that much meat. Whereas I love shooting the geese because they're huge and they make a huge thwomp when they hit the ground. And then
they sure do.
I used to make some really deadly jerky, because it's like a red meat, like a beef. I made some good poppers and some good dinners, but my favorite thing to do a thick cut jerky with goose meat. Oh, deadly. So yeah, I love waterfowl hunting. Have I got a chance to do much of it lately? No. And we're also right on the coast, so some of the birds I have shot out here have been very fishy, which being someone who still hunts to eat, it makes me less tempted to go shoot some of those birds. So I'm gonna have to travel a lot more to go shoot edible birds, we'll say.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Saskatchewan and moved out here when I was like 21, and we hunted waterfowl out there every fall, and it's because you could just go out on a Saturday and do it, or Tuesday or whatever. And it's the one thing I miss the most about hunting is living out here. We lived in the Fraser Valley for a long time, and I got my dose of waterfowl hunting there, but there's guys every 100 yards when you're hunting out here, and it's combat hunting, right? So it's a little crazy, but waterfowl's a lot of fun, and they're good. I mean, smoked duck is delicious. Yeah.
Saskatchewan, Ontario, major flight paths, major agriculture areas as well. So it's a lot of grain-fed birds. So it's delicious meat. It's a social hunt. It's a great introductory hunt for a lot of new hunters, because you can talk, you can blow a hunt, like you can blow, the approach on a few different animals and be like, okay, we'll get the next one, right? So you can talk. You don't have to worry about your smell. You just got to sit in a blind and be quiet for a bit.
Yeah, it's right. All right. Well, Joe, got to thank you, man. It's been a great interview. I think we're what, hour and 20 minutes, something like that, Blake?
Yeah.
So, it went by fast. So, just want to thank you again for taking the time, and congratulations on your season so far. Great stories, and super happy for you. And I can't wait to see future episodes of Junior out there with you too, because he's got a little ways to go, but I got a feeling we're going to see him on camera here soon.
He'll be in the field on some of these hunts. He's been in the field on quite a few hunts with me already. Nothing that I've harvested anything yet, but it'll be happening soon here. And it's going to be a few years before he's pulling the trigger. But Chuck, Blake, I appreciate you guys having me on here. And it's been fun. I can't believe it's been an hour and 20 already. I hope I wasn't too long-winded in my responses. Sometimes I can talk or go on tangents, but no, I've enjoyed the talk tonight, and hopefully shed some light on some questions or topics and help somebody out maybe along the way.
Absolutely. And just closing out, where can everybody find you if they don't know where to find Joe?
Yeah, on Instagram, it's just my first and last name, so Joe_Eppele. Pretty simple. And then either if they want to watch our show, it's The Edge on WildTV, or you can download the WildTV app, and you can stream, like you can binge or stream all of our stuff. And I think it's Big Joe, code Big Joe at checkout, makes it so it's like $30 or $35 for the year for a full subscription. And any wild content that's ever aired on WildTV, you can binge watch it. So if you don't want to watch linear TV, or you don't want to have to wait, till the episode's air, as soon as that episode goes live on linear, it's loaded onto that app as well.
Awesome. Right on. Well, Blake will get the links for all that stuff posted up when we get these things on the platforms. So
For sure.
Awesome. All right, Joe. Thanks a lot, buddy. We'll talk
Thanks,
to you
Joe.
soon.
Appreciate it, man.
All right, guys, take her easy. Have a good night.